Hi folks, thanks very much for joining me on this very cold Friday evening, the first night in December. If you want to know my views on what happened to Rangers last night, views I'm very keen not to repeat any more than I have to, then check out my post-match reaction pod on Gersnet, please. You know I'm just always going to direct you to Gersnet before I ask you to look into this little channel of mine. I had a post-match reaction pod last night, absolutely raging, totally deflated. And then you can have a wee look at the Gersnet Friday night preview pod ahead of our game against St Mirren on Sunday. Myself and my good friend Brian Archer has a right good moan, a bit more soberly, a bit more well judged. He tells himself on everything that happened and didn't happen when Rangers drew 1 each with Aris Limassol to leave them definitely qualified for Europe after Christmas and the only Scottish team still in Europe, but left us hanging on by a thread when it came to progressing in the Europa League. Between you and me, I think our best chance of going through isn't doing anything in Seville. It's Aris Limassol actually beating Sparta Prague, because Aris can still get themselves into the Conference League if they were to beat Sparta by 2 goals. Something that wasn't really mentioned much on BT Sport when I watched the game back on telly today. So if you're a glutton for punishment, or is a trouble shared or trouble halved, please get onto Gersnet and check out those 2 wee pods on the horrible subject of Rangers slipping up yet again at the hands of Cypriot giants Aris Limassol. Meantime, I know I've done a few pods in the last couple of weeks about Rangers fans' relationship with Scotland national team, the Tartan Army, England, just all sorts of international football. And the reason I get into all that was because, as I've said a couple of times, I don't want to bore you with this anymore. I was just trying to establish how I felt with that, because I knew a lot of Rangers fans, and it's a lot of Rangers fans that will be watching this podcast of mine. I'm very grateful for that. We'll have a problem with the Scotland national team, and it was something that had to be kind of qualified, no pun intended. So I did that, and it took about 3.5 hours and 2 really long videos. And what I'd initially wanted to talk about when I started down that road was goal scorers. It was just Scotland international goal scorers. What I'm showing you here is a messy corner of my room, not Lionel Messi, no pun intended again. Then you can see my horrible reflection in the glass. Don't worry, I'm very aware of that. I am fully clothed. That is my arm. Get rid of that interpennant, and you can see down there, this is all my tickets for Euro 96. I was talking about my mate Scott and I, and how the trip down to Euro 96 changed my attitude towards the England national team when I ended up at the semi-final, England against Germany, the famous semi-final at Wembley, where Gareth Southgate missed the decisive penalty. And I realised that English people, surprise, surprise, were just like Scottish people cheering on their own country at football. Oh, what are those other tickets? I can hear you asking. Yes, I can hear you asking that. You are asking that, okay. That's my Champions League final ticket. 2002, game at Hampden, Zinedine Zidane goal. That's my UEFA Cup final when it was at Hampden 2007. Didn't realise I would be going to the UEFA Cup final the following season as well, down in Manchester. That's my one and only World Cup finals match, the opening game, Germany 2006, Germany against Costa Rica. Great game that. And that's my ticket for the last ever Cup Winners' Cup final down in Villa Park in 1999. Because, like I say, I'm a bit of a kind of half-witted anorak. I'm half-witted about most stuff, but I'm not going out there and visiting thousands of grounds all over the world and rapidly ticking off lists. But I do have certain things I want to do, so I've now got to get myself to a Conference League final, and who knows, it may be the what's that ground? Hagia Sophia ground that AEK Athens are in. That's where it's hosting the Conference League final this season. But I'd much rather be going to Dublin with Rangers, or would I? Aye. Anyway, that's my Euro 96 ticket. So never mind the goal scoring thing with Scotland. All I was wanting to talk about was the fact that John McGinn is now on, what is it, 18 goals in 62 games for Scotland. He scored 18 goals and he's on fire. But in terms of Scotland strikers, he's absolutely on fire. He is just gone, I think, joint 6th in the all-time list. The top of the list for Scotland goal scorers is Kenny Dalglish and Dennis Law with 30 goals each. Now, Dennis Law got his 30 in 55 games, almost half. Kenny Dal, real privilege for me, talking about tickets and things I ticked off a list. I saw his last, I was at Hampden for his last goal, Kenny Dal, his last goal for Scotland, that curler into the top corner against Spain. That was a great night, beat Spain 3-1 to eventually qualify for the Mexico 86 World Cup. That was November 84, so it's 39 years ago, good God. But that was brilliant. That was him on 30 goals. And I find it sounds quite decent. John McGinn's got 18 goals now in 62 games for Scotland. But if you just were to slip a wee 2 in between that 1 and the 8 of the 18, you get 128, which is the number of goals that Cristiano Ronaldo has scored for Portugal. Now, that's taken him 205 games, but it highlights a wee problem that I think Scotland have always had when, as I mentioned in a few of those other videos, we basically invented international football. You know, we played the first ever international football match down at the West of Scotland cricket ground back in 1872, and all we've managed is somebody reaching 30 goals. Wales, who've qualified for... We've been in what now? This is our 12th tournament, 12th major finals we're qualified for. I think Wales have been in 4. And you've got Gareth Bale is on 41 goals for Wales. 41 goals. We've got David Healy of Northern Ireland. They, again, have qualified for, I think, 3 World Cups and 1 Euros. So the Northern Irish, they're only on 4 major tournaments, a third of what Scotland have achieved. And they've got David Healy on 36 goals. I don't know how many caps he got him. I don't see him with Gareth Bale. But they're scoring significantly more goals than Scotland. 18 goals in 62 games for John McGinn. Harry Kane has got 62 goals for England. 89 games that's taken them. I know England are doing better than Scotland these days, but they're not exactly picking up hundreds of World Cups or whatever. So it's just something I've always found a bit of a concern with Scotland. I mean, you spread goals throughout the team. Just having somebody who has scored a lot of goals doesn't mean to say you're necessarily going to be a great football nation in the back of that. But you've only got Ali McCoist is 5th on 19 goals. That's 5th in the all-time Scotland list. Laurie Riley, 22 goals in 38 games. He's 4th. Hughie Gallagher. Behind Ken Dalglish and Dennis Law is Hughie Gallagher with 24 goals in 20 games for Scotland. What a player he was, Hughie Gallagher, an absolute legend. Probably one of the guys who's probably helped create this myth or augment the myth that Scottish players, only good Scottish players, are the ones who die young and drink heavily and a bit of a character and what have you. But he could do it properly. He's an absolute legend of a player. But yeah, so we've only got... And the other thing is with hat-tricks. I wrote an article once for When Saturday Comes how we had gone 46 years without a player scoring a hat-trick. At this point in time, I think it was against Cyprus, ironically, when they've just been in the qualifying group that we got out of. I think Colin Steen scored 4 goals against them at Hampden in 1968. It might have been May 68, or was it May 69, actually? And then that was it. That was it until... I think it was at 2013, 2014-ish. We played Gibraltar. It took us another guy got a hat-trick, and it was Stephen Fletcher, ex of Hibs and Sheffield Wednesday and what have you. He scored 3 goals, and I remember he scored the third one. He kind of ran towards the bit I was sitting in the south stand. We still had to go through the embarrassment that day of Gibraltar scoring their first ever goal in international football at Hampden, right in front of me. What a privilege that was. But we replied with our first hat-trick in the space of 46 years, and that was a delightful moment. But it was like the buses, because we then have Stephen Fletcher scoring another hat-trick against Gibraltar in the return leg, which was played in Faro and the Algarve, the return game. I think we then had Robert Snodgrass scoring the hat-trick against Malta, away in Malta. As I don't do away games with Scotland, but I was there when James Forrest scored a hat-trick against Israel shortly afterwards, and that helped us on the way to the last Euros. That was a Nations League match, a real decisive Nations League match, so that was a great night, and it was a great hat-trick. But I think it just sums up the problem Scotland have had with the goal scoring. My all-time hero in terms of stats, in terms of goal scoring, is Gerd Müller, Der Bomber. He's got the 68 goals for Germany in 62 internationals. When the last goal he scored for Germany was the winner in the World Cup final, he was only 30 years old. Not even 30 years old, 29 I think he was at that point in time. I think he would have turned 30 in the November. So still a hell of a lot more goals left in him. But his wife, I think himself, Paul Breitner, and a couple of the other players, that World Cup final was in Munich, the beer capital of the world, where they were based as players with Bayern Munich at their home stadium. That World Cup final against the Dutch, where Gerd Müller scored the winning goal just before half-time. And they wanted a good party, and the German officials, the official team party and kind of hotel, whatever, wives weren't allowed. The officials' wives were allowed. Like your FA, your DFB officials, their wives were allowed, but the players' wives weren't. And so, yeah, I was talking in those previous videos about how FAs all around the world are hated by the fans of clubs in that country. well, the players who just won him the World Cup felt as if, no, that's just one step too far. And Gerd Müller never played for Germany again after that day, after they scored the winner in the World Cup final. So he went on to kind of see him just kind of keep his career ticking over with the winners and a winner in the 1975 European Cup final. He scored a perfectly good goal in the 1976 European Cup final, which was disallowed because, yet again, as he did in that World Cup final against the Dutch, he was so fast that he looked a mile offside. You can't really blame the officials in the days before VAR for ruling out both these goals. The one he scored at Hampden in the European Cup final against Saint Etienne in 76, and the one he scored in the second half of the World Cup final in 74. But he was a mile onside. He's just so good at anticipating. But don't get me onto the subject of Gerd Müller, or we will be here all day. And I had promised you a short video to make up for those marathon jobs during the week, and I still haven't given you my full story of Euro 96 and all the things I did wrong that brought unwanted hooligan attention to myself and my mate Scott. But it was all made up for by the lovely English people we were surrounded by in that semi-final. And to this day, I feel sorry for them for not. I wasn't cheering on England, wasn't actively cheering them on, but I was definitely wanting them to win that night. But tomorrow it's the draw for Euro 2024, and we'll see who Scotland are going to get, and we can start this nonsense all over again. Doesn't it? That's the problem with the football, or the great thing about the football. You get one kick to the low and danglies, and then 2 minutes later you just see another opportunity for glory, and you can't help getting your hopes built up. But if you've got your hopes built up for me putting out a short pod, they've been realised. You're very welcome. See you later, folks.